All right, things had not been going very well lately for the Allies. Luckily, the U.S. had joined their side, and it's time for us, represented here by Mr. T, to head to Europe to help fight the Central Powers. Sorry, guys. Stinks for you. I'm not sure if you know who Mr. T is or not. That's okay. You can ask your parents. So here we come. Get ready. Now, it's a good thing we were coming over, but we were pretty inexperienced. But if nothing else, we helped boost the morale of the exhausted, demoralized Allied troops. Remember, the British and French, for example, our allies, our closest allies. Some of them had been there in the trenches maybe for up to 3 years. Can you imagine the things they saw? How exhausted, how like morally, mentally just exhausted they must have been. So, the first big success that America brings, arguably before we even send our boys over there, is we started using the convoy system to ship our goods over there, our supplies to our allies, the weapons to our allies, food. German U-boats had been sinking the British ships at incredible rates, and the Allies were in big trouble because of the German U-boats, Untersee boats, of course, submarines. So what are you going to do? Now, Admiral Sims had this idea. The American admiral, ADM stands for admiral, as in general for the military. For the general in the army is to admiral in the navy. And he says the convoy system, instead of ships sailing alone across the vast Atlantic Ocean, we should combine them, the merchant ships, which are the ones carrying the actual goods in big crates, whether it's guns or food. We should combine them with troop transports, with an escort, most importantly, of Navy warships with big scary guns. So say that the U-boat goes and fires a torpedo, and they have to fire relatively close to the surface. So like you're going to at least see the trail in the water of like where the bubbles are coming from. So even if they do sink one ship, the rest of the warships will be like, oh, it's over there, sir, due east, this direction. And they would fire all they got at that U-boat. And then even though the U-boat had sunk one of our ships, we were probably going to sink that U-boat. And these guys don't want to, these Germans don't want to drown underwater. Can you imagine being in a U-boat? That has to be one of the worst ways to go. Is trapped underwater in a collapsing U-boat. Ugh. So it really, really, really cut down on the numbers quickly of ships being sunk by the German Navy. Convoys ensured the American troops arrived safely in Europe. All right, this guy, firm jaw. Boy, this isn't a general. I don't know who a general is with the looks of it, I mean. This is General John J. Pershing. He's the head of the American Expeditionary Force, the AEF, American Expeditionary Force, we call it, sending our boys over there. And he wants Americans to fight in separate combat units. He doesn't want them just to be combined and thrown in there as supplements to the British and the French units that were already fighting in the trenches. I think it's probably for two reasons. One, he was afraid that that the British and French generals would just like not care as maybe much about the Americans and just throw them into the enemy. But the other thing is he wanted American troops to stay intact so we could prove ourselves as a unit, as a fighting unit. We could be victorious in this battle and that battle and that battle, so that when it came time for the end of the war, we could be like, look, if it wasn't for American assistance, you wouldn't have won the battle of this and the battle of that. Therefore, you should take our opinions more seriously when it comes to the settling of the treaties and stuff. Value our opinions more. But it is a good time that we're coming over when we do, because Russia is dropping out of the war. Russia has the world's first ever communist revolution happen. Communism had been a theory for a long time, for like maybe less than 100 years, I guess. What is communism? It's extreme socialism where everything is shared amongst the people. No one's rich, no one's poor, and everyone's kind of like right in the middle, but actually a little bit below middle, I would say. But it has to do with communism. You put a dictator at the top calling all the shots. You could have a democracy with socialism. Some countries are very socialistic, like in the Scandinavian countries in Europe. But the dictator on top is kind of what the easiest way to say what communism is. So it happens. The people are angry about the war. The Russian people, they're starving. They don't have food or fuel. And so they force Tsar Nicholas II to step down from his throne. That's right. And when they force him and kill him and all of his ministers, the Bolsheviks take over. The Bolshevik is the name of the political party, the Communist Party. They called themselves the Bolsheviks. Their leader was Vladimir Lenin. So it's official. 1917, the world's first communist government was established. And as a part of the treaty, though, like Russia had to get out of this. Germany was going to try to get something out of the deal. They didn't have to sign on the dotted line, but they agreed that they would take some land from Russia. So you see in the orange there, and in the green, this had been Russian land, but Germany's going to take it. This had been Russian land, but Austria is going to take it. So, but nonetheless, they're out. They can focus on feeding their own people, and they were willing to give up that land to do so. And we'll talk more about communism another day, that's for sure. It's not going away for a while in history class. But the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk is signed in 1918. And they're pretty excited to get out and worry about themselves, I guess. So Germany's probably pumped, right? Because now they're just fighting a one-front war instead of a two-front war. They can just refocus all their troops from the east to the western part of Germany now. So that's going to make German life a little easier. But that means Britain and France and America and all the allies are like, oh, crap. So Germany's last efforts. Germany tries this big attack on the Western Front and gets within 40 miles of Paris. They really kind of push all their might into one spot to try to get through, to get to Paris. Because, taking a capital city of your enemy is always like a really big deal. But Americans are there finally. And we, with our doughboy, right, our fresh doughboy excitement, we push them back. The Battle of Argonne Forest, famous battle. At that point in time, is the largest attack in U.S. history, they say. The Battle of Argonne Forest, you can see it right here, right between the French and Belgian border. It's going to see a lot of action in World War II as well. It's just September 1918 to November 1918. 600,000 American troops involved, 40,000 tons of supplies, 4,000 artillery pieces are used. And we do finally break through the German lines and keep on rolling, keep on pushing through. Here's a picture of a German machine gun nest in the Argonne Forest. Remind me to try to show you some of this Lost Battalion scene. It's a movie in World War I. Hopefully I can find time. Hey, while this Battle of Argonne Forest is happening, this hero of World War I called Alvin York, Sergeant Alvin York, he makes quite a name for himself. He was a hunter from the hills of Tennessee, okay, a real country boy in the hills of Tennessee. He got drafted. And at first he really didn't want to fight because he was what they call a conscientious objector. Look, the government realizes that some people have moral reasons why they don't want to fight. Maybe their religion. In his case, his religion says, I shall not kill. It is a commandment after all. And he thought that it was not morally right to shoot any man, whether or not it's for a just cause or not, which is understandable. So he was a conscientious objector. That word means his conscience objects to, in this case, violence. And he also, some conscientious objectors refuse to even be like a truck driver. The military will say, all right, we won't give you a gun, you can be the truck driver for the troops, or you can be a cook. And sometimes extreme conscientious objectors will say, no, I'm not doing anything to support the killing of others. And so, but this guy makes a name for himself because at the Battle of the Argonne Forest, he talked to his minister back home, and his minister said, son, I think you need to do this. This is the right thing. So he goes and he fights. And he armed with a rifle and a revolver, he single-handedly killed 25 Germans, okay, in this one battle, as he's by himself. And then he finds a few other Americans, and he ends up capturing 132 prisoners. He was doing this thing, though. These guys were running down the hill at him. The Germans were attacking him. He picked off the last German first. Because that way, when these guys are running, they're not looking behind you, and you don't hear the sound, so you're just running down the hill. So he picks off from the back of the line down towards the front, and killed 25 Germans. And then these guys, when they get to the bottom, oh my gosh, this guy, this must be an army of Americans here. Meanwhile, no, it was just York and a few other guys. And so they decide to surrender, and he got them. Made quite a name for himself. They made movies about him. He was a hero. He went around on a speaking tour around the country, and he's famous for the rest of his life, Sergeant York. So the war finally ends. While fighting is going on, Austria-Hungary, they're dropping out. The Ottoman Turks are going to drop out. Germany has the people are rising up in Germany. They're sick of this. They want no parts. They force the emperor, the Kaiser, if you will, Kaiser Wilhelm II, to step down. So finally, on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, 1918, as in 11 a.m. on November 11th, the fighting stopped. They signed an armistice, aka a ceasefire, and the war officially ends. All right, so go back and take the quiz on Google Classroom, and that's it. Check in for more. See ya.